Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Spoon Podcast. This is your host, Michael Wolf. And today's conversation is with Andrew Simmons, an entrepreneur, restaurant operator, and overall tinkerer. I had found out about Andrew as he had documented his journey about transforming his restaurant using technology and how he was just being so open about it as he adopted things like pizza robots and digital platforms. And it was just such a fascinating story. He had bought in the restaurant just before COVID hit with a partner. He eventually bought his partner out, and he's been ever since really just rethinking how he can run a restaurant from an operational standpoint, about how he supports his customers, how he uses employees, with a heavy focus on using technology to make his business more efficient. And I think it's just really interesting. And he's been writing about it on LinkedIn and on a blog. And he just started a podcast about it, and just super fascinating. I think you'll find his journey really interesting. And it stands in such stark contrast to some of the news we've heard recently from startups like Zoom, who just spent hundreds of millions of dollars building technology from scratch and then trying to run a restaurant. And Andrew just is just someone who's said, hey, there's this great technology out here. I can use it in my restaurant, and he tinkers and makes it work. And it's just really interesting. So I think you'll enjoy this conversation that I have with Andrew. I hope you'll learn a little bit from it. If you want to find out more about Andrew, just go to the Spoon, our website, and we'll connect to his LinkedIn in the show notes. As always, if you want to listen to more Spoon podcasts, just do it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, or at our website, The Spoon. All right, that's it for now. Let's get to my conversation with Andrew. Andrew, great to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here again.
Yeah, we talked, I think, is in February or so, and I was just following with great fascination your experimentation with your restaurant. You're currently your single restaurant in Southern California area or Central California area.
So we are in Ramona, which is on the outskirts of San Diego. So kind of very rural, probably about 20, 25 minutes from the very edge of San Diego.
You have, I think, for a big chunk of your career, been something of an entrepreneur, kind of adjacent to tech and food delivery. You can probably go into much greater detail, but you decided a few years ago to buy a restaurant opportunistically. This has kind of served as almost like an incubation place, an experimentation place for a lot of your ideas around technology and how to reinvent the restaurant. But let's step back. Would you describe your career?
So most of my career has been getting in on things at the very cutting edge. So like back in 1998, 1999, I bought, one of the first and then second digital presses in the country before, digital printing became a thing in 2006, 2007. During the whole dot-com bubble. So it's always been kind of about, leveraging that technology for something new, kind of looking forward. And that's pretty much been my entire career at it. So whether it was, working in printing or, doing canvas prints or rural restaurant delivery or now, printing pizza, essentially, making pizza through automation. It's always been kind of at the very cutting edge, kind of learning as I go, and then, sharing what I learn.
Yeah, that's part of the reason I just found out about you. You've been almost open sourcing your experiences as you've gone along this journey. You've been very transparent, documenting a lot of it on LinkedIn, but also I think there's some blogs. I think you started a podcast. And I want to let our listeners know kind of what you've been building. But why have you decided to be so open sourced about like your learnings as you go through these things and you learn as you go?
I kind of like sharing what I learn and then getting feedback from other people on, essentially their advice. I don't have a lot of, like I'm not located in Silicon Valley. I don't have a huge network of friends that I can rely on. So what I like to do is just kind of talk about what I'm doing, get input from other people, and just share. Like everything they do is kind of off the shelf automation, robotics. It's nothing custom built. It's easy to replicate. You could take what I've learned and you could open up your own robotic pizzeria using, just essentially my comments, my posts, my subject matter that I've written about around the whole thing, and then how to make it work. We bought this restaurant in January of 2020. It seemed like a great idea at the time.
Yeah.
We're doing really well with our restaurant delivery service. And this restaurant came up for sale. And we thought, let's buy the restaurant and learn what our restaurant partners experience so that we can make a better product for doing restaurant delivery.
You and a former partner who were running this business, your kind of your food delivery business, decided to do it.
Correct. And he was, and for him to want to buy the restaurant was kind of interesting because his entire career with me was being my CNO, my essentially chief no officer. Like anything you want to do that's new, the answer is no. So we bought this restaurant and we thought that we would use it as a way to, build ideas out that would support restaurants, but from the restaurant view. And then, so that was January 2020. And by the end of January, we were into COVID. COVID became a thing. And so now we had to essentially shut down the restaurant and figure out how to make the restaurant work in the COVID environment. So those are the challenges we went through learning that. Staying open. We did lots and lots of kits for, making pizza. So folks weren't buying pizza that was made, but they were certainly buying the kits. And I think we sold like 3,000 or 4,000 kits. We had these long assembly lines where it'd be dough balls, sauce, cheese, pepperonis, cornmeal in a pizza box, and just stacked, and just, this line of people out the door buying those kits. And that's what kept us afloat all summer long.
You bought this right before the pandemic and thought it'd be almost a normal, let's run our pizza restaurant, figure out what the people we work with do. And almost instantaneously you were forced to basically be creative and pivot and adjust the business model. And you've been doing it ever since. Like you've been doing that literally ever since. And we can talk about some of that as well.
And that was up until July of last year. And then last year in July, my partner decided that he no longer was interested in owning a restaurant. And I ended up buying him out at that point.
And since that time, you've been deploying, like you described, like pretty much off the shelf stuff. And I wrote an article last week about Zoom, which people in food tech industry know about, this startup that raised, I think, like hundreds of millions of dollars largely from SoftBank, was doing a proprietary pizza robot, and then also like they had a food delivery component. But it's just like so many of the venture funded folks doing food automation, oftentimes they want to pair the robotics with a restaurant concept where they're basically being both like the technology makers and then the users. You're just going, hey, there's lots of companies who are making cool pizza robots. I can just be a customer. I can get under a service contract. I can, pay whatever, I'm paying Picnic. You're using the Picnic pizza robot.
Right.
I can rent that for a couple $1,000s a month. I don't, whatever you pay. It seems like almost like a smarter approach. Like lots of people are like spending all the money to develop this technology. I'm just going to use it to make my restaurant better.
Look at Zoom. They raised $485 million to build some kind of machine that would make pizza, which obviously they did not, succeed at. I built my whole entire restaurant, the whole automation side for, about $200,000. And a lot of it is not so much like we do the Picnic as a RAAS service, robotics as a service. So we're paying a couple $1,000s a month for that. But once I signed up for that service, then I realized that there were a lot of other things that I needed to make happen in order to really utilize that. So I needed a faster way to stretch dough. I needed a way to store more dough. I needed, to upgrade freezers and refrigerators and blenders and mixers and all kinds of things that we use in our business. I had to train all of my staff, and not all my staff were on board with it. So
you got this pizza robot in Picnic, and you had to essentially redesign and rethink your entire workflow. Because if you had like the Picnic robot and everything else stayed the same, people, hand rolling the dough and taking it out, like those are a bunch of, I guess, bottlenecks just surrounding the picnic robot, right? Like, so you basically said in
Right.
order both the pre-production before the picnic and after, you had to rethink it so you can accelerate the entire workflow.
Exactly. So like when we stretch dough, depending on which cook is stretching the dough, it's anywhere from 60 seconds to 4 minutes, depending on how skilled they are at stretching that dough. So I could have a super fast machine that does 135 pies an hour or 130 pies an hour. But if it still takes me 4 minutes to stretch dough, I've lost all of that speed in that regard. So one of the first things we did was we started testing dough presses. And I was struggling with dough presses. I had posted about it on LinkedIn, and another company reached out to me and said, hey, you should try this particular type of press, which is from Coupion, I think it is. It presses dough in 1.4 seconds.
Wow.
And so, I can make a 12-inch pie and just literally stack up, stretch dough ready to go to drop into the machine super, super fast.
You also had to redo your refrigeration because it sounded like the speed at which you were producing pizzas and moving through dough, you had to put a lot more into cold storage.
Correct. Yeah. So we ended up getting like 2 or 3 Wi-Fi connected fridges so that I could, make sure our dough wasn't going bad during the night. We added more freezers. I mean, everything that we make is fresh. So we're not doing any kind of par-baked crust. We're not buying frozen dough balls. All of our dough is handmade every morning. We use clear cogs to track how much dough that we're going to need for that following shift, essentially based upon whatever we've used previously. So once we get that list from clear cogs, our guys in the morning start making those dough balls. Then we refrigerate it to start proofing it. And because we're producing more pies than we were before, we're just using up more and more space for refrigeration.
What about the cook side? So you obviously get the dough flattened, you get it topped with sauce and cheese from the picnic. You got to cook it. So you actually also had to accelerate the cooking side?
Correct. So currently, or originally, but we still do, we have bludgeoned ovens. So those are nice stone bake ovens. But as soon as you open the door, all the heat goes out, and then you have to wait for the heat to kind of build back up when you drop the pies in there. So we're 15, 20 minutes to make pies inside the blodgett. I bought initially one Turbo Chef Fire oven, loved it so much that I bought a couple more of them. So now we have 3 of them. My ultimate goal is to put in 9 of them. So I need 6 more to finish out my plan for that, and that'll give me a speed of 135 pies per hour versus the machine that produces them at 135 per hour. That has the finest, in my opinion, finest artisan quality, but in terms of productivity, it's only 1 pie in, 1 pie out at a time. Maximum pie is 14 inches. But I cook a pie in 130 seconds. So we pop it in, it cooks, pull it out, check the crust. Crust looks good, drops it in the box, slices it, goes out the door to the customer. So you have to be pretty efficient at multitasking. I'd like to build a robotic arm that could feed 9 ovens simultaneously.
Yeah.
But that might be something down the road. But for now, everything up to this point has been completely off the shelf. What works? It's just kind of figuring out how the workflow goes, what I need to add or modify.
Yeah, on the workflow side, so the humans using now 3 or 4 Turbo Chefs, the old ovens, getting used to the new pizza dough press, it's been constantly evolving because you're continuously adding new components and tweaking it. So talk a little bit about that. Is that largely you? Do you have like some employees that are just kind of being very flexible? Talk about.
It's largely me, and it's me pushing them to use this new technology. I mean, we've gone through quite a few employees. A lot of people are either afraid of the new technology or they just don't want to change. Like I've always done pies this way for the last 10 years. I've always stretched. I'm a fast stretcher. I can stretch in 60 seconds. But that doesn't work in this model. So, I bring in new tech. I test it myself. I figure out how to make it work. I document it, and then I start training employees on how to use it. Not all the employees, like I said, have been receptive, and we've lost employees over the last 7 months, 8 months that just refuse to shift into this new model.
Let's talk about that, because another really fascinating thing I've been following as you've been really open about all these transitions is that change from, an employee model where you inherited some employees, you probably hired a lot of them yourself, came out of COVID largely with, the traditional model. And then you started adapting all this technology. A lot of the employees didn't want to adapt to it. They didn't want to use it. And you lost the people, they left. And I know that some of them were not very happy about it. I think you documented how one former employee was writing bad reviews or reporting you to like the food inspection department. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So as we've gone, so we were at, say, coming out of July when I bought out my partner, we were at 14 employees. Mm-hmm. I started adding all the automation, shifting things around. Now today we're at 4 employees total. I haven't really gotten rid of any employee except for some folks that I got rid of back in March when I saw that really dine-in wasn't really working for us anymore, and that came from the great analytics software that comes through Toast, so we could better break down what our actual costs were for offering dine-in. We found that offering full-service dine-in didn't really work. I offered those folks jobs within the restaurant making pies. They had no interest. They left, and then they started this campaign of, we're going to automation, we're getting rid of people, we're a terrible restaurant, so on and so forth, but all through social media. And we saw about a 30% drop in our sales in March after letting these people go. And then it culminated with some photos that one of the employees took of things that she, quote unquote, saw in the restaurant, and shared with the health department. The health department came, did an inspection. One of the issues had to do with slow drains. And so we got shut down for, we were down for about 10 days. I had to jackhammer the floor to get to the drains. When we got to the drains, we found marbles and ball bearings inside the trap of the drain, which was causing the slowing in the water. We did see that the pipes were, not great either. They're old cast iron pipes, so we ended up replacing all the pipes as well. But within about 20 minutes of being shut down by the health department, that notice that they stick on your window hit social media.
The same people who reported you took it and then were spreading it on Instagram or other socials.
Correct. Right. So, we took a pretty big hit from that. Our sales we're about 50% of where we were, pre-shutdown on that part. But, even I added a stride queue to our system earlier this week. So now when you call in, it pushes a order on your mobile phone link. So, please order online, submit it that way. And if you have to talk to someone, press 3, and then that goes to a call center. Because what we're finding is that customers are calling in, they want to place an order, and they're an average of 6 minutes on the phone, trying to figure out what they want for their toppings, what kind of crust are they going to do, what are they going to do here, what are they going to do that, then they want to chat. And I love chatting with them, but that's roughly, 9 phone calls per hour that we're doing. And at the same time, customers are coming up and they want their food, they want their pizzas. And so you're on the phone and you can't really take care of the customer at the same time. So we added this, stride queue. Those calls now roll in directly to the call center. After that, the call center takes the orders. They submit the order through Toast, and it ends up in on our digital make line, and we're all set to go. But again, somebody's unhappy, so they have to post something, and then it's, you're not using local, you're not doing this, you're not doing that.
Yeah.
But I'd love to use local, but I can't find those people to work, and that's why we have automation.
And so today, from where you were a year ago when you kind of started to ramp things up again, you've completely reinvented the way you make pizza. You're down from like 14 to 4 employees, and so even with business down 50% due to like vindictive former employees, your unit cost has gone way down. I think you've reported some at like how much it costs to make you pizza. Even at the lower sales rate, hopefully that'll recover. You're making your profit with your lower cost basis?
Yeah, we are. So our cost per pie now is about $2.65, and that includes the dough, the labor, the cheese, the sauce. We do exactly 6.4 ounces of cheese on every pie. We do exactly 4.6 ounces of sauce on every pie. The electricity to cook it, everything is at $2.65 per pie, and that's probably on par with conversations I've had with other larger national franchises of where their cost is being part of a huge organization. So, when we're selling pies at $14, $16, $20, $25 each, and we're only, we have a cost of, $2.65 each, that makes for a pretty decent profit margin overall.
You had a little bit of capital expense, right? You talked about a $200,000 reinvention in terms of like to kind of rebuild the entire thing, move towards automation. When you're talking about that $2.65 per pie, you're not necessarily factoring in are you allocating some of that capital expense, or that's just your operating and your margin cost?
Yeah, that's just totally my operating cost.
What's interesting to me is you guys took over, a neighborhood restaurant. It was Mama Ramona's. They were known in the city, and you kind of transitioned to this new technology. Is this basically something you see as an incubation engine for a larger vision, like a chain of restaurants? And you're just not going to be kind of a solo pizza restaurant operator at this point.
Yeah, no, my ultimate plan is to open about 100 restaurants. I have a roadmap for how we get there. The fact that it survives in this small rural community, which is kind of an anti-tech community as well. If I can make it work here, I can make it work in any other market, outside of Ramona. The subscription program is great. We did very well with it in our local rural community. So when I bring this out to a larger population, although I anticipate we will cap the number of subscriptions that we offer, that brings in a good steady flow of weekly customers who then end up buying an extra pie or wings or a soda or something else, along those lines.
I want to talk a little bit about the subscription, but before we do that, this vision towards 100 or so restaurants, I think, do you have a name called, I think it's Pizza Roboto? Is that kind of what you're thinking right now?
Correct. Yes.
Is this something that you envision franchises? Are you looking to get venture capital for this? I mean, can you kind of give us a little bit of a peek where you see that going?
Sure. So I'd love to get some venture capital for it. I'd like these to become company-owned stores ultimately. The amount of capital that I need is a fraction. I think I figured it was about 4% of what Zoom used to get to $100 million a year in revenue. So, but again, I'm not trying to, build a robot. I'm not trying to, reinvent the wheel. That technology is here now. So the products from Picnic, the ovens from Turbo Chef, the dough press, that's all standard off-the-shelf equipment that if you just build out the model and find the right units to build or acquire, you can hit that number fairly easily.
I think one of the challenges you faced was taking over, a beloved local restaurant. The owner had been there, I think, for a decade or two. You guys took it over, and you kind of had a transition from the old model to the new model. Going into new markets in a more of a greenfield build, you wouldn't have all those challenges in a way. Like you could just say, hey, we're the new, I don't know if you want to call it Pizza Roboto or Mama Ramona's. You're just kind of the new pizza place in town, also offering things like subscriptions and lower cost of pizza, et cetera.
Right. And, using that restaurant's base of existing customers. So we're not starting from scratch. There's already orders flowing in. We're just running them more efficiently. We're not changing recipes. We can use the same ingredients. It's a better quality pizza produced at a faster rate. But I also think that like within San Diego, we'll probably use Mama Ramona's main location here in Ramona for, probably, essentially making our own dough, acting as that commissary. We're also building out about an 800 square foot microgreen facility. So we'll start growing all of our own cilantro, our own herbs that we use within our pies. We'll have excess capacity so we can supply other restaurants or supply our own restaurants, and just essentially make better use of our restaurant. Our restaurant's 5,000 square feet in Ramona. There is no way to move into smaller space. Like for right now, for what we do for the automation side, I produce pizzas in under 500 square feet. So that's the ovens, the picnic, the press, the storage, which is quite a bit smaller than the overall 5,000 square foot footprint that we have. The challenge here is that there are limited spaces for new restaurants, and the water district is very cost prohibitive. Like if I wanted to open up a new location, I use 5.3 EDUs, and EDU is $17,000. I have to upfront pay that to the water district in order to get the water turned on in that location. So it's like, $100,000 that I have to front. And that EDU sticks with the landlord, not with the tenant. I have to pay it, but the landlord benefits with it. So I'm stuck in this 5,000 square feet. So what's the best use of it? I've got roughly 2,500 square feet devoted to dine-in. I see maybe 4 or 5 folks or 4 or 5 groups that come in that use it. So here I've got 800 square feet of unused space, and I'm spending X number of dollars for veggies every week. Now I can have completely fresh, literally cut in the morning and served in the afternoon.
So you're transitioning to like a little bit of a hub and spoke model where you're going to do some centralized production via commissary, and then have smaller retail footprints around a metro geo area. I imagine if you move to other locations in California, maybe like Arizona, is that kind of the vision as well? Like, hey, let's build out the Arizona market. Let's build out, the Washington market.
Yeah, I'll have to test and see how it works. I mean, again, I'm really only doing it here since I've got 5,000 square feet. So I don't have to buy another Hobart mixer when I go into some new space. I don't have to buy another, bunch of stuff that I have in one central location. So, we'll track that cost, and I'll share all of that too on LinkedIn. So, what works, what doesn't work.
What's your favorite new tool you've used? I saw you're trying out the Resto GPT, I think generative AI based tool to kind of create an instant website. What are some of the cool things you've tried in the past month or two?
Well, we've got StrideQ, which we tried out. We did the Resto GPT. We're trying a website with owner.com. We're working on something with Koala. So I don't have a lot of new fun stuff that I'm changing up too much. We're pretty much set on our overall tech stack. I'm just replacing a couple items I don't think worked as well as I thought they would. And then I'm looking to see how we can use, AI in some manner to help facilitate or even speed up just a little bit more what we do.
And again, just to kind of revisit, because I think this is so important, why I think what you're doing is so interesting is you're just leveraging all these available technologies that have emerged over the past few years around automation, software, through the Toast or whatever. But like, you're not like a startup inventing this stuff. Like that takes hundreds of millions of dollars, specialized technology folks. You're just an operator who's just saying, hey, I want to transform my restaurant. Let's just tinker with this, add a new thing. And as you add one thing, you have to kind of adjust up or down the kind of the workflow. But I just think it's really fascinating. And I just wonder, do you think more pizza operators or restaurant operators will do what you're doing? Or because the transition to like a new model where you have to displace workers or you have to figure it out, or there's a resistance to change. There's not going to be that many people doing what you're doing, at least for a while.
No, I don't think so. I think it's the same as when I got into doing digital printing back in 1998, 99. When I first started doing it, everybody said, man, that's super dumb. Why would you invest, $1.5 million in this equipment? It's unproven. It took, 7, 8 years until the whole .com, bubble hit. And then suddenly everybody was into doing digital. And I think that's kind of the same thing here. The reason that I started with the whole automation was Governor Newsom rolled out a law that basically said we're going to start paying fast food workers up to $23 an hour. And it's only a matter of time before that all rolls down to restaurants and small businesses and whatnot that aren't part of that original idea for that $23 an hour. So if I kind of tackle it now, I'm not scrambling when wages are 22, 23, 24 or more dollars per hour, and you're still getting the same $12 per pie for pizza or the same $14 for a hamburger. So that's how I got started in it. But then on top of that, I also write about it. So if you're wanting to try the change, you can see what I've gone through. You can kind of build your approach to what do I add, what do I watch for, how do I train the employees, how do I mitigate for any kind of social media damage that's tried, and try and get ahead of that. And all I'm kind of doing is just like, this is how I got there. This is how you can get there. And it doesn't take a ton of money to do it. I mean, yeah, I spent about $200,000, but looking to where I am now, I if I knew exactly which direction to go, I'd be at, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. It's just a lot of buying stuff, trying it out, and then dumping what doesn't work.
Yeah, you're the early one pioneering at a kind of a family-owned restaurant scale, developing a new tech stack to use for running a pizza restaurant, and other people can learn from what you're doing. We'll share your links and where people can read you in the show notes. But I do want to talk about the subscription plan because we mentioned it early on. I just want to circle back to that. So you had this idea, hey, let my customers get a pizza subscription. They can get a pizza every week for a year. Where'd you get this idea, and tell us how it's going?
I don't really know how I got the idea. I was just thinking about what would drive more revenue, more customers in the door. This was close to in early November, so prior to Black Friday. And so I was looking at, what does it cost for us to produce a finished pie on the picnic and the ovens, which again is about that, $265. It goes up and down just a little bit as the block price changes for cheese, but for the most part, stays consistent. So what if I offered you one free pizza every week for 52 weeks for a cost of $149? What does that look like? And so I kind of figured that probably 6 times a year you wouldn't redeem your coupon. It's a use it or lose it. So if you don't use it on week 1, you don't get to carry it over to week 2. It's just gone. We use Incentivio to manage the subscription. So we are sending out a reminder to every customer every Sunday night. Hey, you've got this coupon, use it or lose it. Come redeem it. It's free. So I had calculated out, and we have about a 88% redemption on it, figuring that 4 weeks out of the year you'd go on vacation and maybe 2 weeks you wouldn't use it at all. That redemption rate is actually running at about 54%. Oh, and I forgot, on Black Friday we offered it at $99.
Half the time people are coming to get their pizza out of 52 weeks, they're coming to get it. The full price of this membership per year is $149. You said you Black Friday sailed it for $99, but the big learning for you is the redemption rate's way lower than you thought.
Way, way lower. And out of all of the customers that I see coming in, only a very small percentage of them redeem just the pie and nothing else and come every single week. Most people, they love pizza, but they don't love pizza every week. They love it every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. So maybe they're coming every Friday or every other Friday to get that pie. So now we're seeing on average, we'll make about a $34 net profit on that order, that subscription that we sold for $99 because of that low redemption rate. I'm kind of curious to watch as we go through the summer if that 54% drops. Like we saw a slight drop in May, but we were shut down for a few weeks. But I had calculated out, the number of redemptions that could have happened. So we dropped down to about 48%. We bumped back up to 54%. But maybe through the summer, as there's more people traveling, we may see that number drop down even just a little bit further. Not much more further, I don't think, but right in around there.
So I have to ask, is there like the one guy or girl the college student who just loves his weekly pizza is getting the full value of their subscription? Like, do you have any people that have like close to 100% redemption?
There are roughly 15 people out of the 300 we sold that come in every single week, only get a pie, and that's it. And they come every single week.
And that's fine because there's only 15. It's what, 5% of your total?
Yeah, less than 5%.
It'd be a nightmare if everyone came. But even if that happened, if they bought it for $150, if someone came every week, you'd still probably end up in the black. You're still in the black on that, right?
Still in the black. Still in the black no matter what. So even if they're redeeming every single pie, we're still making money as an overall whole for the project. That's why, like, for this market, which, again, like I said, is pretty rural, kind of anti-tech, we sold 300 subscriptions. If I'm in, like, Oceanside or downtown San Diego in a more densely populated area, I think I could easily sell 500 to 1,000 subscriptions right off the bat. And so each of these new stores that I open up will roll out that subscription program that gives us guaranteed customers coming in the door. It gives us some good upfront working capital on each location. It'll make it so that I can leapfrog from that location to that next location to open up, so just essentially one after another. That's why the amount of capital that I need to open up 100 stores or 200 stores is so little compared to what Zoom spent to not have anything.
Yeah. And you mentioned people coming in with the subscriptions are getting more. So what is the average bill? Like, are they getting an extra pizza, getting some lasagna or like some pop?
So we see soda, going out the door. We see, they'll upgrade to like, I want, God forbid, pineapple and something else on my pie. So we see 2 or 3 toppings that get added to those pies. In some cases, we see a second pie or a third pie added to it as well. We did sell, we sold, I think like I had one, I'm like, well, if someone will spend $149, will they spend $5.99? And you can have 3 of any kind of pizza you want every single week. And we sold, I think, 7 or 8 of those. We call them Eat Like a Boss. And, they'll come in, they'll get like 2 meat lovers and 1 multi dulce pizza, every single week. But then they buy soda with it, or they buy wings too. So, like I said, we didn't sell as many of them, but they were, a nice, $600 hit, coming in. So, but clearly, at $99, we can make money with it. And as we open up new locations, we'll try it. And as always, I'll share what happens.
And I look forward to reading those updates. For those of people who are listening who want to find out and kind of follow along with the journey with you, Andrew, where can people find your writing?
I'm mostly on LinkedIn.
I'll put it in the show notes at the end so people can follow along.
Yep. And then I'm also at pizzatv.com/Andrew, which is through PMQ Magazine.
Awesome. Hey, well, Andrew, this has been great. Like I said, I've enjoyed following you along as you experimented and kind of rethought how you want to run your restaurant. And I look forward to seeing where you go with this.
Sounds good. Thanks, Michael.
Pretty interesting, huh? Someone doing all this hard work of trying to figure out how to use all this technology and going full bore into it, recreating an entire tech stack, basically using products that are available on the market and trying to get them to fit together up and down the production workflow. One part you bring in ultimately changes how fast you can go. Then you have to kind of tweak the rest of the production line to make sure that you can keep up. And it's just super fascinating. So I'm glad that Andrew is doing the industry a favor by writing about his experiences and just kind of telling people how it's going. And I think maybe setting a template, creating maybe a blueprint for some other operators who are thinking along the same line. So I'll continue to follow him. I hope you can too as well. As I said, we will link to his LinkedIn on the Spoon website from the show notes. You can also just look on LinkedIn for Andrew Simmons and find out about him there. And he posts pretty regularly, so I suggest that you check him out. All right, folks, that's it for now. Thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you all soon.